All right, our top story this evening is Singaporean president who is in India this week. It's marking a significant milestone in the 60th year of diplomatic ties between the two sides. He's met Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar with discussions to focus on India-Singapore relations, which particularly include focus on non-traditional areas of cooperation like energy, industrial parks, semiconductors likely to be a major focus area, skills being another key priority. This will be the Singaporean leader's first state visit to India and the first by any Singapore president to India in the last 10 years. Now, they've already elevated their partnership. What does this mean going forward? What will be their priority areas from technology to skills? Let's get in my colleague Muhammad Ghazali to really connect the dots for us and explain to us the significance of this visit. Go ahead, Ghazali, explain to us.
Singapore president is visiting for the next 3 days. He is here in India. He will be visiting Odisha. That is one part of the visit. But before moving to Odisha, he'll be meeting the president, the honorable prime minister. Today evening, his meeting with the external affairs minister is also scheduled. Now, why these meetings are very important? Because last year in September, when Prime Minister Modi visited Singapore, a lot of announcements were made. A lot of intention was being shown that perhaps Singapore is also very interested in investing in India. So you will see all those announcements being materialized when the Singapore's president here meets the Prime Minister. A joint statement is also expected to be issued. Besides that, the areas which you mentioned that may see a lot of cooperation would be in semiconductor. Also, India and Singapore are jointly holding sort of skills development centers in India. One is running in Odisha, the others are running in 6 different states. So the Singapore president will also visit those centers to see the progress and how they are operating. Besides that, the digital payment initiative, which India or which is working in Singapore, has been inspired by India. So besides defense, energy and other sectors, semiconductor will be one area which will be under focus, because Prime Minister spoke that how Singapore will be the anchor of this entire semiconductor industry to officiate in India. So for that, Singapore's support will be needed. We also know that how it has been the leading contributor when it comes to FDI in India. So besides that, cultural connectivity between India and Singapore has been talked about. Just recently before his visit, one of the Singapore's minister had said that how Indian community in Singapore has been the top contributors when it comes to different areas or sectors there for its growth. So these connect, or these issues will certainly be discussed. And as you rightly pointed out, this is the first visit in the last 10 years by the president or head of the state of Singapore. So that itself carries a lot of weightage.
All right. I appreciate you taking out the time to explain that to us in detail. Muhammad Ghazali giving us the details as far as Singapore president's visit. All right, let's get you the big questions that we are asking, or rather the big themes that we are putting out to our guests this evening as to the significance of Singapore president's visit. The first question is that will Singapore help bridge India's skill gap? Remember, skill is going to be a key priority and focus for the Singaporean president in this visit, and how much will this boost our skilling needs? The second question is, how will Singapore push in India's semiconductor mission? That's likely to be, in my opinion, the key theme between India and Singapore relationship over the next decade. It will be defined to a large extent by semiconductors. And the other is that, can Singapore help drive India's digital future? Technology, how much of it can it be? Which are the areas where technology collaboration is likely to really take off, where they could define it going forward? And that will be another key priority area. But remember, how can India-Singapore work to counter China is going to be another area that may come up. Remember, China is a very large investor in Singapore, and also 67% of Singaporeans are actually of Chinese descent. But the fact is, China matters in that region, and how much can it play out between India and Singapore is something that we're going to ask. And what's next in terms of India's Act East policy? Singapore sits at the cusp of India's Act East policy, and how will it take that forward is another key question that we'll put to our panelists joining me today. All right, let's get in Amitendu Patil, who's joining me as well, Amitendu Palit, who's joining me from Delhi, and of course we have Manju Seth to talk to us about the significance of India-Singapore ties, and more importantly, where could they go from here? So from Manju Seth, let me start with you. Potential possibilities are there, but in your assessment, what do you think could be the overarching theme of India-Singapore ties going forward?
As you very rightly mentioned, it's a strategic partnership. which was established last year, will be further strengthened, and this will cover the entire gamut of the relationship. And the key areas will be, I think, defense, security, and skills development, of course, and the digital aspect on both sides, the collaboration in the digital and digitalization. And of course, a very important, crucial is the semiconductor and chips manufacturing. I think there will be collaboration there because Singapore has some strengths there. We have some strengths there, but yes, it has to be. I think Singapore has more compared to us, a little more strength in that area, and together I think we can work together to increase the manufacturing facility, establish manufacturing facilities in India. And I also feel that since this is the 60th year of our diplomatic relations, it will be a signal of the strong and very, very crucial relationship that we've had for over the years. Our Act East, Singapore is a very important element, an important player in our Act East policy. And again, a sizable diaspora there.
Okay. Hold your thought there, sir. Hold your thought there, ma'am. I want to get in Mr. Palit as well to talk about some of these priorities. Let's take them one by one. Mr. Palit, in your assessment, how important would be, let's say, semiconductors and skills, which could really be the overarching theme of the Singaporean president's visit this time?
Thank you so much for inviting me onto the show, Gaurie. And in fact, you'd recall that when Prime Minister Modi was in Singapore around 4 months ago, and the comprehensive strategic partnership that was worked out at that point in time, it mentioned 4 themes, and you have brought up all the 4 themes out here, out of which semiconductor and skills are sizably important in terms of their immediate requirements and the way they have been progressing. I think with respect to semiconductors, there's a very interesting realization which has come across most countries of the world, that there's no country in the world which can claim to have complete proficiency in semiconductor supply chains. So when it comes to the chips, whether they are the legacy chips, which are of a somewhat older generation, or the advanced chips, nobody actually owns the majority of production, and to that extent can command a strategic influence by claiming to own the chips. Where India has come into the story is kind of as a late starter. Today we see India at a point in time where India is beginning to figure prominently in the supply chain of semiconductors, but more towards the lower end. Most of the semiconductor functioning in India right now is in the assembly, testing, and packaging segment. But there are some research and development functions which are coming in. I think where Singapore is aiming to come in the India story is somewhat in the middle level of the game, which is in the establishment of fabrication units, which will be bringing out these chips for their eventual amalgamation into the devices and the civilian and non-civilian purposes for which they are used. It's a very vital role. It's a very vital role simply because of the fact that India is aspiring to become a global semiconductor hub in the next 5 to 10 years. And with that objective in mind, India needs to collaborate effectively and strategically with countries at various levels. So, for example, there's a collaboration with the United States that is going on. There's a collaboration with Taiwan that is going on, and there's a collaboration with Singapore that's going on.
Hold your thought there, sir. Hold your thought. I'm going to come to that the semiconductor bit as well in greater detail. But there's another aspect that I want to touch upon, which is that, we're talking about the economic ties, we're talking about business ties. What about the political aspect of this relationship, the geopolitical dimensions of this? We've talked about the geo-economic part of it, the geotech part of it, but there's the geopolitical aspect of this, isn't it? Manju Seth.
Absolutely, the geopolitical aspect is very strong, and with China very, very closely, should I say, embedded in all of Southeast Asia, included in Singapore, very strong ties, a lot of investments, a lot of trade. So it is a little, a kind of challenge, should I say, for India and Singapore to become, really very, very close. But already, I think, over the years, if you see, though China has always been active in Southeast Asia and Singapore, even then, we've had fairly robust ties with most countries in Southeast Asia, including with Singapore. With Singapore, it's always been a very good relationship. And I think the geopolitical aspect is important because the leaders there have always looked at India in a positive way over the years, and we've had very good relationships in all sectors, of course, in education and other in trade. But now, with these new emerging, technologies coming in, and the fact that they have skills there and they would like to be involved, their investments are quite high in India. So we can work together on innovation, on manufacturing, and very rightly, semiconductors and chips are the future.
Mr. Amitendra, you want to comment on the geopolitical aspect of this relationship?
I think the geopolitical relationship between the two countries has taken a decisive turn with the growth of the idea of the Indo Pacific. Now, when we look at this construct, and if you look back in the past, the primary regional concept was the APEC, the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation. India was never really a part of the APEC group. It couldn't. It did become a part of the ASEAN framework as an ASEAN +1 partner, but then we had the episode where India did not join the RCEP because of its own concerns over a number of things. But today, over the last 5 years, when we look back and see at the trajectory of regional relationships, we have the Indo Pacific Economic Framework. This is one framework which, given the size of its economic might, is the largest regional bloc in the world in terms of the number of people it has in it and the share of the world GDP that it has in it. And India and Singapore are very prominent players in that Indo-Pacific Economic Partnership, along with the United States, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and several other Southeast Asian countries. I think the important part of this understanding is today India and Singapore are collaborating at a regional level on very big cross-cutting issues. And these are not just about, defense matters, but these are on issues of clean tech, disaster management, financial cooperation, now all of which have a strategic impact and all of which also have a geopolitical impact in today's world. For example, they're talking closely about green shipping. They're talking about urban infrastructure cooperation in a variety of areas. They're talking about how to manage skills and skill synergies on both sides. Now, all of these cannot happen unless and until there is a certain degree of geopolitical comfort which both sides have with each other. I think that's
I agree with you there, sir. That work can happen only when there is geopolitical comfort between the two partners to take that relationship forward. Running out of time, but very quickly, Manju said, I haven't asked you the question about the China factor. How much do you think that's going to play around as far as the India-Singapore relationship is concerned? Because in the Indo-Pacific, India also wants to counter China in a sense to ensure that there is no regional hegemony of China in this region.
Absolutely, and China has been very assertive. It has been very, very active in ensuring that its writ runs especially in the South China Sea and in the Indo-Pacific. And I think for Singapore, they have managed to balance, I think, over the years, a very good balance between their relationship with China, with India. And I think Singapore will continue to do that. And I think we can depend on Singapore as a friend of India.
All right, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me on this edition of India Global. And on that note, we slip into a very short break. We come back on the other side with a big boost to Indian Navy. 3 warships have been commissioned. What does this mean? Why it is so significant? And what does this mean for the Atmanirbhar Bharat push? We come back and decode. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is India Global. We now turn our attention to the other big story we are tracking. Prime Minister Modi commissioned 3 frontline naval combatants today at Mumbai's naval dockyard. These inductions aim to bolster India's maritime capabilities and underscore the nation's commitment to self-reliance in defense manufacturing. The PM also highlighted that this is the first time that 3 different kinds of made-in-India combatants have been inducted into the Indian Navy. That in itself highlights its significance and leap that India has taken in this space. Listen in to Prime Minister Modi on that.
साथियों, आज भारत पूरे विश्व और खासकर ग्लोबल साउथ में एक भरोसेमंद और जिम्मेदार साथी के रूप में पहचाना जा रहा है। इंडियन ओशन रीजन में भारत की उपस्थिति, भारत का सामर्थ्य एक बहुत बड़ा आधार है। साथियों, पिछले 10 साल में जिस तरह भारत की तीनों सेनाओं ने आत्मनिर्भरता के मंत्र को अपनाया है, वो बहुत ही सराहनीय है। हमारी सेनाओं ने 5,000 से ज्यादा ऐसे साजो सामान और उपकरणों की लिस्ट तैयार की है जो अब वो विदेशों से नहीं मंगाएगी।
All right, shifting focus now. Meta has apologized for Mark Zuckerberg's comment about the NDA losing the 2024 Lok Sabha elections. This comes after IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnav fact-checked Zuckerberg on social media. Meta responded to Ashwini Vaishnav's post where he called Mark Zuckerberg's comments on Indian election disappointing. Meta termed Mark's comments on India's loss an inadvertent error and went on to highlight India's importance to the company. Remember, the apology comes after Meta was summoned by the Parliamentary Standing Committee on IT on grounds of spreading misinformation. South Korea's impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol was arrested and is set to face questioning over his controversial declaration of martial law last month, as per the anti-corruption investigators. The arrest ended an early morning standoff outside his official residence in Seoul, and despite his arrest, Yoon remained defiant, stating that he agreed to cooperate with authorities to avoid bloodshed. He also claimed that the rule of law had completely collapsed following his detention, adding to the political turmoil that has raised concerns both domestically and internationally. His arrest makes him the first sitting president in South Korea's history to be detained. Listen to what Yoon had said before being arrested.
저는 오늘 이들이 경호 보안 구역을 소방 장비를 동원해서 침입해 들어오는 것을 보고 불미스러운 유혈 사태를 막기 위해서 일단 불법 수사이긴 하지만 공수처 출석에 응하기로 했습니다. 그러나 제가 이 공수처의 수사를 인정하는 것은 아닙니다.
Turning to Sri Lanka, where the Sri Lankan President Anurakumara Dissanayake held talks with Chinese leader Xi Jinping today, a month after visiting India on his first overseas trip since winning the elections in September last year. While several deals are expected to be signed during the visit, the issues in focus include permitting Chinese research vehicles regarded as spy ships by India. Sri Lanka's debt commitments to China, stated to be Colombo's largest creditor, and expansion of the investments under BRI are also likely to feature prominently. In New Delhi last month, Dissanayake met Prime Minister Modi and said he would not allow Sri Lanka to be used in a manner that is detrimental to the interests of India. You're watching India Global. We now turn our attention to the other big story that we are tracking. In a stunning development, UK Treasury Minister Tulip Siddiq has resigned under intense pressure amidst growing investigations into corruption linked to her family ties with Bangladesh's ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Siddiq, named in a major probe over alleged embezzlement and controversial deals, stepped down as questions surrounding her actions continue to escalate. This report tells you the story in greater detail.
In a dramatic turn of events, UK Treasury Minister Tulip Siddiq has resigned amid growing pressure over a series of corruption investigations linked to her family's ties with Bangladesh's ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. She has been named in an investigation into claims her family embezzled up to £3.9 billion from infrastructure spending in Bangladesh. Siddiq, the Labour MP from Hampstead and Highgate, had referred herself to the UK Standards Advisor after questions arose about her aunt's involvement in corruption scandals in Bangladesh. Though the investigation found no evidence of wrongdoing, Sir Laurie Magnus criticised Siddiq for not being more cautious with the family's connections. Despite Sir Laurie's conclusion that Siddiq acted with no ill intent, the mounting scrutiny proved too much. In a statement, Siddiq insisted her resignation would prevent distractions for the government, but also firmly denied any wrongdoing. As Bangladesh presses forward with a criminal investigation, Siddiq's position has become untenable. The allegations extend beyond UK properties linked to Siddiq's aunt allies, which claims that Siddiq facilitated a controversial deal with Russia in 2013. Though she denies any official involvement, the investigation with Bangladesh continues to unfold. With questions of corruption swirling, the resignation marks the end of Siddiq's tenure as Treasury Minister, but the investigation into her family's ties to Bangladesh's political elite is far from over.
All right, staying with Bangladesh, another important story coming in where pressure seems to be mounting on Bangladesh's interim chief, which is Muhammad Yunus, where former Prime Minister Khaleda is now asking, and her Bangladesh Nationalist Party has stepped up pressure on Muhammad Yunus's interim government to hold the parliamentary elections. Remember, there's still no word specifically on when the elections will be held. But Khaleda is saying they should be held latest by July or August this year. The Yunus government, installed in August last year, primarily to hold the parliamentary election, has yet to commit to a deadline to hold these elections, stating that the country's democratic institutions must be reformed before polls can actually be held. Reports earlier suggested that the Yunus government is looking at a time frame that may delay the parliamentary election until next year, early next year. Meanwhile, the Yunus government continues to target ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and her family, and continues to demand that India extradite her, and pressuring, of course, and the pressure that finally led to Siddiq resigning in the UK as well. The Bangladesh Supreme Court, meanwhile, has acquitted former Prime Minister and chairperson of BNP Khaleda in a corruption case, overturning the High Court's earlier 10-year prison sentence. So this gives you what really is happening in Bangladesh right now, the political landscape, how it's unfolding in Bangladesh. And that's the key question that we are putting out to my panelists today. And the questions that I'm going to put is about how can elections and when should elections actually happen? The first question is that pressure mounts on Yunus. Will he relent? Remember, he's an unelected interim leader. How long will he stay before he actually ensures that elections take place? That's the first question. The second key question is, will interim government allow all parties to contest? Remember, the one big thing that everybody is saying is that Awami League may not be allowed at all. And will that then be another sham election that Bangladesh will hold? That's the second key question. The third important part we are asking is, who could be Bangladesh's next leader? Who could really emerge out of the turmoil that Bangladesh is actually facing right now? Will it be somebody from the BNP? Will it be somebody from the Jamaat? Who knows? Or will it be Muhammad Yunus also staying on in some other role? And the last question that we are asking is that, will Yunus actually hold free and fair elections? That's the big question. Elections can happen, but what is the sanctity of that entire electoral process? Let's put that questions to the panelists joining me. Manju Seth joins me, and we also have Ali Ahmed Mabroor, who's a senior journalist, joining me from Bangladesh. Thank you so much, both of you, for taking out the time. And let me start with you, Ali, as things stand right now, the clamor to hold an election is only growing. And it was earlier only pockets and people in Bangladesh, but now it's the largest opposition party, the BNP, also saying that hold the elections in the summer of 2025. How long do you think Mr. Muhammad Yunus will delay this before he finally decides that elections must happen?
Okay. First of all, thank you so much, NDTV, and all your audiences and the honorable guest. Let me clarify first that BNP, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, actually is looking for early election. And according to them, a political government, if a political government is elected, then Bangladesh will face more stability and peace. And they think that a political government can control the situation even better than the incumbent interim government. But the fact is, apart from BNP, there are some other stakeholders who are holding different views. Let me clarify first that, as you know, that Yunus-led government has formed several commissions seeking necessary reforms in the election procedures and other structures to facilitate a free, fair, and credible election. So one of the commissions are working with local government structural reforms, And the chairman of this commission, Professor Mr. Tofal, he actually, day before yesterday, he recommended for holding local government election first, even before the national election. This is one point. Another one is the university students who have actually taken part in the last movement. They are calling for university level election like DAKSU, Dhaka University Central Student Union election. And another stakeholders are the victims of the July mass killing who are claiming that election should not be held before prosecuting or trying the offenders or perpetrators of the July mass killing. So there are various opinions about the early elections or the when that election will take place.
Okay, so there can be different opinions about it, but the fact is that Bangladesh was a successful democratic country as far as Islamic nations are concerned. And Manju Seth, let me ask you this, that is now a reputation that is badly tarnished since last year. How soon do you see the return to elections? Because now there's clamor growing from within Bangladesh's main political outfits. Manju Seth.
Actually, this.
I think as Mr. Ali mentioned, there are different stakeholders, there are different people asking for different views. But the fact is that this was meant to be an interim government. I think we should not forget that, irrespective of, and its mandate was to hold elections. So I think from that point of view, it is absolutely necessary that elections be held at the earliest. The reforms will continue, and I feel, as the BNP has said, that elections, once elections are held, the new government will be in a position, the elected government will be in a better position to go ahead with the reforms and to enforce those reforms and to have the tax reforms, etc., being criticized, etc., and to do the right thing for the people of Bangladesh and for the country. So I think the mandate was for the Yunus government to be only interim. And I think a 1 year and a 1.5 year interim government, I think was not really envisaged. And so I think it is important that elections be held at the earliest. And BNP is one of the biggest opposition parties.
Indeed.
And as you mentioned, will the Awami League be allowed to contest these elections? So if the elections, everybody is not allowed to participate in the elections, I think that is again going to be a setback for the electoral process and for Bangladesh's democracy.
Mr. Ali, let me put that question to you, which is that, let's say the elections happen this year sometime. When they happen is something that we don't know. Hopefully they happen this year. But what about some of the other aspects of ensuring that the election is actually a real democratic exercise? Awami League is allowed to participate. It's a free and fair election. How does Bangladesh ensure that these main pillars of democratic and electoral constituents actually happen to ensure that the elections take place properly?
Yeah, you have to understand the reality in Bangladesh. Actually, more than 1,500 people have been killed in July-August movement. And Awami League has been blamed for this mass killing. And the victims and many of the civil rights workers, civil society members and others, they are claiming for abstaining, for keeping Awami League abstained from at least 2 or 3 elections. Because the reality is, if you tell about the democratic process, the fact is in last 3 elections during the Awami League regime, many of the voters claimed that they could not be able to cast their votes. So if you turn that the process, the democratic process was not available in the Awami League regime as well. There are some allegations. So the fact is, I think it will be clear in the days to come.
But Mr. Ali, as a journalist, I want your opinion and assessment really here, that if let's say one of the main parties is not allowed to contest, do you think it will be a real electoral exercise?
Okay, let me clarify. The first thing is the victims, they are claiming for keeping Awami League outside the election process. But the fact is the interim government did not take any such measures yet. And I think that what I'm observing, that many of the some of the observers, they think that a party like Awami League should not be banned and it should not be done in that way. So I think it will be more clear and more visible, I think, in the upcoming days that what will be the fate of Army League. And I think it is too early to comment that whether Army League will not be allowed to take part in next election.
Okay, Manju said you wanted to come in on that part, yeah.
From what the interim leader, Mr. Yunus, has said, that they will not allow, Awami League should not be allowed. He's made some statement to the, I don't recall the exact statement, but to the effect that Awami League should not be allowed to participate in the election. And I think that is not a very, very, very positive sign for elections. And at the same time, now the BNP is demanding that elections be held. Now, if you look at Bangladesh, these are the two main parties. Of course, there are others. There are Jatiya Party, and there are many other smaller parties. But the two major parties are the Awami League and the BNP. Now, since the Awami League has sort of been put out of the reckoning, almost, the BNP is the main party, and they want elections to be held early, because they want the democratic process to be, restarted, to be established in Bangladesh.
Okay.
Because we do see that there has been this attempt. There seems to be an attempt by the interim government to prolong its tenure as much as it can. It looks like.
Mr. Ali, yes. Mr. Ali, I want to ask you the final question, which is that, in the wake of how things are looking right now, do you think, with BNP, will it be Khaleda Zia leading the party, or will it be someone else? I'm asking because of the fact that she's also not got age on her side right now.
Yeah. First of all, let me add one point to my previous guest. That is, whatever Mr. Yunus have said, we didn't get any official statement from the interim government about keeping Army League outside the election process so far, number one. Number two is the mainstream political party, including BNP, they haven't said anything about banning Army League or keeping Army League outside the election process. Even they don't believe in this kind of initiatives or actions. I have just told you the demand about the victims of the July-August revolution, number one. Number two, about who will lead the country, I think that is another issue which will be more, I think, obvious or more clear in the upcoming days, because, Begum Zia is also an aged lady, and she is not, I think, physically fit properly to lead the nation.
Okay.
So BNP may have Hassan, who is discharging his duties as the acting chairperson of BNP. Even he may be a choice, or anyone else, if it is BNP. Or it may happen that, the agitating students, they have also formed a new party.
Yes.
And they are trying to gather some more people. And I think if they can bring more people into their confidence, then they can be another option.
All right, let's leave it there. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me on
Thank you so much.
A very important issue. And viewers, as we wrap up this discussion, let me also now talk about the bottom line of what's really happening in Bangladesh. The bottom line, viewers, is that as far as Bangladesh is concerned, it was one of the few, probably the only Islamic country to have a successful, thriving and continuous democracy. But that doesn't exist anymore. The interim government of Muhammad Yunus had one single agenda, which is to hold elections. But what it looks like is that the unelected tenure of Muhammad Yunus is being extended to postpone the elections as much as it can. Even as we wait for the election schedule to be finalized, for the electoral schedule to be finalized, there are only two expectations from Bangladesh. One, it should be free and fair. All parties should be allowed to contest. And secondly, it should be in a time-bound manner. Bangladesh must return to democracy, and Muhammad Yunus must demit office. He is an unelected leader for a short period of time. This is the least he can do for his country. All right, we slip into a very short break with more news and stories on the other side. Stay with us. Back, viewers, to India Global. We now turn our attention to an important story coming in, which is that US President Joe Biden and Egyptian President Abdel Sisi discussed negotiations for a ceasefire and hostage release deal in Gaza and agreed to remain in close coordination in the coming hours. The White House has said this, that the negotiators were trying to, on Tuesday, to clinch agreement on the final details of a ceasefire deal in Gaza after marathon talks took place in Qatar with the involved parties, saying a deal was closer than ever before. Both Egypt and the US are mediators in the talks. The White House said the two leaders also discussed surging humanitarian aid in Gaza, where Israel's military assault in the last 15 months has killed, as per Palestinian authorities, 46,000 Palestinians, while also triggering accusations of a disproportionate response from Israel's side to the 7th of October attacks by Hamas that started this entire chain of reactions. All right, shifting focus now. After over 500,000 quote-unquote TikTok refugees have piled on to the Chinese social media app Red Note just days before a proposed US ban on the popular social media app TikTok. A little-known Chinese app has seen a surge in traffic, and in fact, it is often referred to as China's answer to the Instagram. It has witnessed many US users logging into its platform lately. What is this app all about, and can it really give refuge to millions of US TikTok users? This report tells you that in greater detail.
A years-long ruckus over TikTok's fate in the US could finally end this week, with the deadline for a sale or ban of the short-form video app set for Sunday. As the US Supreme Court ponders over the future of TikTok, a growing number of American social media users are migrating to a Chinese app in protest. Named Xiaohongshu, the hugely popular medium in China surged to the top position in Apple's US App Store on Tuesday.
Okay, I am here. I have found the note. I've found the red note, and it is So I'm here to talk about books, to talk about music and movies, and being a general good human being kind to others, loving others.
Xiaohongshu, which means Little Red Book, is often shortened by US users to Red Note. It was founded in 2013 and is one of China's biggest social media platforms with 300 million users. It's often referred to as China's answer to Instagram, gaining popularity for sharing tips on travel, makeup, and fashion. But like most apps and internet services in China, Red Note is subject to censorship. Platforms typically enforce censorship by deleting content that Beijing considers politically sensitive. Chinese users have warned the new users not to discuss anything considered politically sensitive, as they may get censored.
Since yesterday, we have seen many new posts in English calling themselves the TikTok refugees, and the reaction from the Chinese users have been mixed. Some believe this is a great way the Chinese culture get to a global audience, while some worries this will be a cultural invasion and it might have an impact on the censorship.
Though it has seen a wave of users arriving on its platform, it's not clear if Xiaohongshu will serve as a sustainable replacement for TikTok, which has created an ecosystem that allows for e-commerce and advertising. To sustain the newfound global fame, the app will need to be optimized for an international user base, as it lacks translation features. With Vishal Vivek, Bureau Report, NDTV World.
All right, President-elect Donald Trump's choice for Defense Secretary, that's Pete Hegseth, vowed on Tuesday to foster a warrior culture at the Pentagon and confronted allegations of his misconduct during a testy Senate confirmation hearing that drew protesters but also veterans in support. Asked directly about allegations against him for disorderly conduct by Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, Hegseth dismissed them as an anonymous smear. In the line of questioning with Michigan Democrat Alyssa, Hegseth sidestepped whether he would follow orders from President Trump that would violate the Constitution. However, certain Republican senators backed Pete Hegseth at the hearing. Listen in to what really happened at that fiery hearing.
Mr. Hegseth, what is the highest level of international negotiations that you have engaged in, that you have led in? Because the Secretary of Defense does lead international security negotiations. There are three main ones that the Secretary of Defense leads and signs: Can you name at least one of them?
Could you repeat the question, Senator?
Sure. What is the highest level of international security agreement that you have led? And can you name some that the Secretary of Defense would lead? There's three main ones. Do you know?
I have not been involved in international security arrangements because I have not been in government other
Okay.
than serving in the military. So my job has been
So
to
no, the
lead
answer is no.
men
Can
and
you
women in
name one of the
combat.
three main ones that the
You're
Secretary
talking
of
about
Defense
defense
signs?
arrangements. I mean, NATO might be one that you're referring to.
Status of Forces Agreement would be one of them.
Status of Forces Agreement. I've been a part of teaching
So-
about Status of Forces Agreements.
But you don't
inside
remember to
Afghanistan.
mention it? You're not qualified, Mr. Hegseth. You're not qualified.
Admittedly, this nomination is unconventional. The nominee is unconventional. Just like that New York developer who rode down the escalator in 2015 to announce his candidacy for president. That may be what makes Mr. Hegseth an excellent choice to improve this unacceptable status quo that I just described. He is a decorated post-9/11 combat veteran. He will inject a new warrior ethos into the Pentagon, a spirit that can cascade from the top down. Mr. Hegseth will bring energy and fresh ideas to shake up the bureaucracy.
In fact, staying with U.S., winds that have fanned wildfires in the U.S. city of Los Angeles are expected to kick up again today after a 25th death from the huge week-long outbreak was confirmed. Forecasters have again identified an area of extreme fire danger, emphasizing on the highly dangerous risk level. The anticipated increase in wind speeds threatens to further fan the remaining 4 blazes, which firefighters have made further progress on in tackling during the few days of calmer conditions. The 25th death was confirmed by LA County Medical Examiner's Office, while 13 people remain missing. All right, with that, it's a wrap of this edition of India Global. Thanks so much for watching.